Hey, my name is Mike. I run the channel Grantham. Today we have a very special guest. We have Christian Craighead right here. I want to thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Thanks a lot for having me on.
There's so much I want to say, but this is you, man. I'd love you to just talk to my audience, because I'm sure they're really excited to know just more about you, more about everything, obviously. But Chris, on you, man. Take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
On me?
On you.
This is not how I thought it was going to go.
This is how it's going to go.
It's the same thing. I get caught out with these podcasts. I haven't done many. I'm like new to them, and it's like all of a sudden it's, hey, on you. I'm like, what?
Well, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Chris Craighead. I'm from the United Kingdom, and I was in the British Army for 28 years. During that time in the 28 years, I served in the Parachute Regiment, which is like the equivalent of the Ranger Battalion. Pathfinder platoon, which is like the equivalent of Force Recon or MARSOC, and then 22nd Special Air Service Regiment.
That's a lot. What made you want to do that when you were growing up?
It's for me, the military service was definitely a calling. From as long as I can remember, that's all I wanted to do was be a warrior, to be a soldier. The odd thing is, no one in my family was in the military.
Really?
Clearly, my grandparents and great aunts and uncles, they all served in World War II in various sort of roles in the Air Force, or mainly the Air Force. But no one in my immediate sort of family served in the military, or anyone near me.
What did they think of you wanting to go into the military, since this wasn't really a family tradition?
I mean, in Northeast England, people are supportive of people who join the military. So no one ever tried to talk me down from it. Mm-hmm. But very, very quickly, especially by the time I was, say, 12, they knew it was more than just a thing. I was like fanatical, and I was any information, anything I was just absorbing and then taking anything in about the military, and especially special units like the Parachute Regiment and the SAS, the World War II exploits and things. And like I say, I was fanatical about it. The thing that was odd is that I'm nearly 50 years old now, but when I was...
Oh, young 50 though.
Yeah,
you look great.
I'm like a Hollywood 50.
Yeah, so, Hollywood 50.
And but I was really skinny. I was really fit, really good at running. I used to run all the time, and I still run every day. But people would look at me and go, "You don't look like you could be a paratrooper or a special," because as we all know, that most people in special forces are like 7 foot tall.
Of course,
like
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, but yeah. But, and that's what people thought. So they'd be looking and going, maybe he's going to, and people were worried when I was starting to get to that age of like, he's going to have his heart broken because he's not going to get into the military and things. And honestly, that carried on throughout my life. People still, I think people will look back at children and they still think like, that's who you are. And so people didn't think I'd get into the army or anything, and because it was just skin and bone.
What types of materials did you read? Did you ingest as a kid? I know when I was younger, I read like all the LRRP books from the Vietnam War and stuff. Like I devoured that material because I thought it was so cool.
Well, the big thing for me at first was was TV and movies.
Yeah,
that was the one that brought me on.
You have to tell them what movies and TV, of course.
So this is going to be so the movie that stands out is like, and I always like to say that is the star point, is the wild geese.
We're dead. Esposito, you're not dead until I tell you you're dead, understand?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
Wild geese.
I've never seen it.
Can we end this?
This interview is over.
We can't be friends.
We're done.
So the wild geese, Richard Burton,
okay,
Roger Moore, Richard Harris. Mm-hmm. It's about mercenaries in Africa. Oh wow. So it's like quintessentially British soldiers becoming mercenaries in Africa, and in it there's a free fall scene. They free fall into the mission.
Oh really?
So it's ahead of the curve, really. It's when people weren't even talking about. It's not so much Halo, but it's military free fall, and it's in there
doing all that stuff. Like before, it was like super cool and everything.
and they free fall in, and it's a great movie. It is dated, but it's still.
I'll watch it.
Yeah, everyone has to watch it.
I'll force my wife to watch it.
That is the start point. And there's lots of quotes in there that maybe if you served in the military, go, I've heard that, and that's where maybe started from. So anyway, saw that. and that was me like, hey, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then from then there's TV shows and things like that. That was like it's people could say bad parenting or whatever, but they'd be like, here's the video. I'd run down the video shop, they'd get it, and I'd run home, they could go out drinking, and I'd be like watching Commando back to back every Saturday night and just like learning.
It sounds like a good childhood to me.
And
I
it's
don't know,
like-
it sounds pretty awesome.
But again, the times might be messed up on this, but again, I stopped at an uncle's house, and he on Betamax. Do you have Betamax here?
I'm very
It's
familiar
like
with it.
so he had
Yeah,
a
I don't know if
Betamax
they are.
video.
It's like VHS but better.
It's like there's the first gen, and he got the shop and went to hire the videos, and he got First Blood. So I would have been. I'm trying to work this out, and I did write it down. I would have been, I think, 11 years old when I saw First Blood, and
It's a perfect age to watch First Blood, by the way. That is ordained by Grand Thumb.
Actually, that's wrong. I would have been 9 years old.
Still ordained, still good.
Because I remember when Rambo First Blood Part 2 came out in 1986, I'd seen it.
Oh, really?
I'd seen the first one, and I wanted to say obviously it was it, but I watched that. But at the same time, he also hired a video called Who Dares Wins, which is about the SAS.
Yeah.
Again, it's a dated movie, but it's again, and I saw that and went, wow. At the end they do a hostage rescue on the U.S. Embassy and in England, and it's really good, and it still is
a great film.
And that was like, so that laid the seed for the SAS, and there's a whole all my peers' generation, they will all mention it's before the Bravo 20 sort of thing came out. So that generation will say, yeah, Who Dares Wins is like the movie that really like put my sights onto the SAS.
You know, people really try to say like media doesn't influence like a whole lot of things, but like holy crap, like the media that you consume as a kid 100% correlates to kind of what you want to do later in life.
And then later on, so when I, First Blood is a different movie to all the Rambo franchise, and it was good, but I didn't think, wow, that's amazing. But when I saw Rambo First Blood Part 2 on VHS, which would have been 1987, which would have put me at 12 years old, thereabouts. It's definitely 11, 12 years old when I saw First Blood Part 2. That blew my mind. That was like, so I used to live in a house near like a bit of wood, like a dean, and it was like not that big, but it's a wooded area, and it was well known that I knew this wood like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
And watching Rambo First Blood Part 2, as soon as I finished, I darted out of the house, and I was like hiding behind trees and doing that, and then like moving, and it was just, but it's just, well, I mean, what are the, like, you look at it and go, that movie, and if you haven't watched Rambo First Blood Part 2, if you haven't seen it for a while,
it's so worth it.
It's really good.
It's really good.
And when people will say, "Oh, he fired an RPG inside a helicopter," spoiler. It's like, it's not. It's good. It's like James Bond. It's like you just take it and you roll with it, and it's a great video. I love it. I can't speak highly enough. And I don't know if you saw last year I bought a Lyle Rambo knife.
I didn't realize that you did that.
I bought, and it's like this thing that I've got, and it's just like, and I had to buy the Rambo First Blood Part 2 one because it just means so much to me. Yeah. And I've got it, and but the Rambo movie was real. Like, that like blew my mind in it. And then added to that was like, I haven't got a thing about everyone's got a thing about knives.
Of course.
And anyone, it's not cool to carry on the street, I suppose, but knives are knives.
That's
and
awesome.
I think it goes back to being cavemen or whatever. Or not.
Of course, having the sharper rock.
But so one of my friend's older brother gave him a Rambo knife, and it was one of these moody, probably made in China, like bunny rabbit camouflage, like phony leather sheath, with this Rambo knife by design with a saw blade on top and like a round compass on the end of the handle, and like my friend was, "Oh, I got this Rambo knife," and to me it was like, that's like
that's it.
I need it. I want it. I have to have that. And I must have gave him so much like it's funny you're trading in Rambo knife, like giving toys or Star Wars figures or things for like I'll give you all this.
Yeah,
I'll give you this Boba Fett.
Throwing all the toys.
I traded in Boba Fett for him and all these high end action figures, and I get this Rambo knife. So this is really going off trail, but
no, this is completely on trail.
So I didn't like there's this thing like guys might have in that time might have like nudie magazines or whatever stashed away in the house. Is like not my thing. I'm just all about the Rambo knife, and it is. But for me, it's like I've got this like bit of contraband. This is like I can't like anyone see this in my family or whatever.
Yeah.
So I like smuggle it into my grandma's house where I was living pretty much all the time, and find this hiding place where I think no one's ever going to look. Wrap it up in like clothing and stuff and hide it, and then it's like, and at night when I think everyone's asleep, I'd get up, open up, go into the airing cupboard, go into the back, bring out the thing, like get out, let's look at it, and go, this is a Rambo night, and then so that's that bit, and that's like it might be a bit odd, but you know,
no, it's not at all.
So then we got the Rambo knife, but then it's like getting it out into action, and
so
how
did you get that thing out into the woods?
So you like. Again, go through the whole process when you think everyone's down watching TV, put it under, and yet I'm walking. Ultimately, no one's probably going to care, but I'm like, and I should say I'm about 11 or 12 years old here. I'm not like a hood. taking. I'm going to go out in the streets and start carving. I'm going to start carving people up. No, I'm not. I'm just going to. So I'm like 11 years old, and I'm like putting my get out on fear of death or something. Get out of the house, and then I'm into the woods, and then I'm in my element. It's like on me, and again back to where we were before of like hiding behind trees, and there's not sneaking up on anyone. There's not like so we're clear. I'm not like I'm not harassing people or anything.
We're LARPing. We're just having fun in the woods.
It's the Gen 1 LARPing. Or
Gen 1 LARPing with Christian Craighead.
And then moving around, and it's the whole thing, and like trying to like work the compass, and and it was just good, and then I don't know what happened with it. In the end.
Your grandma probably found it and hucked that thing right out.
But and so that was just a good thing, and it again has just made me. And those movies and Rambo and Who Dares Wins, the Wild Geese, they just not Wild Geese started it, but all these others just fed into it. Then round about the same time in about 87, 88. They brought out a publication called Combat and Survival. So these, I don't know if you had it in America, but these like magazines,
I'm
really high quality, and had like tactics, weaponry, and all this. And so I would, and luckily my mother and father stepfather would pay for this every week, and I'd collect them all again, every like
cover to cover,
everything. Yeah, I've got a big thing about reading. I never read a book till I was about 14 years old.
Interesting.
And the first book. So I was reading all these magazines and things, and the first book I read was Anders Lassen, VC MC of the SAS, and he was a Danish soldier in the SAS and won the SAS's only Victoria Cross in World War II. Again, remarkable book, remarkable story, and again that just fed into this whole thing that was driving me. And I always say to people, once I started reading, I didn't stop. I still read today, but a lot. But and then from then it was all these World War II, because that was before the all the books and things started coming out about it. So it was all just World War II exploits.
Of course. Now I understand there's a lot of like youth programs for kind of cadets and military training and that type of stuff. Did you participate in that prior to entering the military?
Yeah, I was in the Army cadets.
Okay.
I lied about my age because you have to be 13 to get in.
Yeah.
And I was 12.
Well, you had a Rambo knife. You were qualified to get in.
I kind of thought of that. But yeah, again, same thing. Joined it, loved it, and completely like fanatical.
Yeah.
Doing everything,
and you did that 12 through
to 16, and then I joined the Army.
Okay, so you can join the Army at 16.
Yeah.
So this is that's my lack of knowledge right there. And so, what was it like entering the military? Something I'm sure you'd been fantasizing about for a long time.
Yeah, I mean it was it's like it's here. It's like this because I realized when I was 16, and then thought I can join the Army now.
Yeah.
All right, this is it. And I was doing what we call the GCSEs, and so I went to the recruiting office, and then that was it. And then I think it's probably a lot harder now, as in there's a lot more red tape and things.
Sure.
But And then I was accepted into the army and joined the army in September 1992.
Nice. You posted a picture on your social media, I think a couple days back. It was a picture of you maybe 9 months into your military service.
Yeah.
You got big ears, you look really young, and you put the quote next to it. You said, there's a fight coming later in your life, or something along those lines, but you don't know when it's going to be, but you don't know, but you're preparing your entire life for it.
Yeah.
Like going back, kind of looking at that early military career of kind of going through, like what really prepared you for events later in your life that you felt were really formative?
Like, I'm in a very privileged position because I've had a key moment in my life, which I can then use as a marker in time and say, well, there's post and pre, and then and my sort of thought is like I said, there's moments that you're preparing for. From the moment you're born, you're preparing for something.
Sure.
And it could be anything. For me, I think I really what shaped me. It wasn't the stuff that I did in the military. It was the stuff that I did as a child growing up.
Yeah.
And I can go down this whole sob story and this pity party of like bad things happen. And what jumps up back at me is a lot of the time I've done stuff, even from is being alone, and I've had to make things work when I have no support and just being on my own, and that's as a child leading into adulthood. And the other thing as well is that there's bad people out there, and bad people will do what they do, but also there's good people, and some of these good people have had bad things done to them, and from then you either accept it and become a victim, or you have this code where you think, I'm going to protect the weak. I'm not going to let people be bullied. I'm going to stand up for people and do the right thing. And sometimes the right thing's difficult to do, and I think it's important that, like, sometimes you just got to step up and do the right thing.
I think so. I think that's something that's that a lot of people, when knowing what they know about you, when they look at you, I think that's what they're thinking. They're thinking, what type of man is it that makes you who you are? So I think this is why it's so interesting for so many people to hear the story of you in your early military life and what happened there. So, like, I think hearing like early military career in the parachute regiment is something that I'm sure my audience would love to hear about this stuff that began to prepare you for kind of pre-post event of your life.
I think one thing I have to say now is, like, I've done 2 podcasts before this.
Yeah.
And so if everyone's watched them and I contradict myself, it's like
she's nervous.
I mean to be right, and if you say he didn't say that, he's a year older or a year younger, or this happened then, or he didn't say this. Again, I don't prepare for these, so it's the best. But I joined the army at 16. And I mentioned this I did the non-profit podcast. We talked a lot about this and what it means. But in 1992, there was a thing called Junior Para. It's Junior Parachute Regiment. The rest of the army had a program which was called Junior Leaders, and that would be like a year-long program. You join, you'd get like junior rank, so you got experience of leading, management, and things like that. Junior Para was just for these young men who wanted to join the parachute regiment, which was 6 months, and there was no rank, there was nothing. You were just, like, say, all equally worthless, and to be treated accordingly, which was basically like thrashed for 6 months, and then you could do adult training.
Yeah.
And I look back at it with mixed feelings. Like, would I do it again? Yes.
Of course.
But it's that thing, if I knew a 16-year-old that would have to do that again, I'd be like, I don't know if some of that's right. Yeah. But here's the thing, is my platoon, it was either, again, I said this on before, it's either 27 platoon or 29 platoon, I can't remember, was the last one of that. It was shelved, the junior program in the army was shelved for about a year, I believe, and then it started back up. On my last day in the army, I gave a presentation to the junior army college in Harrogate.
Yeah. So
I gave them a presentation about something I did, that we all know what I did, and I gave a presentation about that. And when I got shown around the facilities, and it's brilliant. They're preparing young men and women for not just service in the military, but for adulthood. Really good. They do lots of time on education, courses that will set them up to be efficient and do well in the army. It was really good. And again, it's still take my hats off to these young 16-year-olds who are willing to step up and
absolutely,
and go into it. But here's the question: completely different. It was completely different to my time in junior para, which was brutal. But what do you want as a nation or as an organisation? What do you want out of your 16-year-old soldiers? Do you want to prepare them for good adult service in whatever capacity, or do you want a group of killer machines? Again, because you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
You can, and that's the question: is what do you want? So I'd say there's an argument to be saying the old way was better because that's what you got.
Yeah.
And the number of people who were from junior para who ended up in the special forces or excelling in the parachute regiment is quite well known, or maybe not so well known now because we're all getting older now. But
not that old.
It produced some of the finest fighting soldiers. Junior para produced some of the finest fighting men, I think, on the planet. So there's a lot to answer for taking young 16-year-olds, treating them really badly, and training them how to kill people, and
makes for efficient force.
And this is. Hope people know me, and I'm not coming across as some sort of psychopath. Although we had the issue with a Rambo knife as a kid, is making these young 16-year-olds. And I left junior para, and I wrote a letter to my mother, who I was very close with at that point in my life, and it was this letter saying how I just long for combat, and hopefully one day I'll die, in combat, serving my country in a glorious death, and it was all this. And it is completely indoctrination of, and I think it's really good. You look back and say that's all you want to do is you want to join the army and you want to see combat.
You want to do your job after you're trained to it.
And I think society's changed a little bit, maybe in some areas.
I would definitely agree with you. It's certainly a different issue, but I think you hit the nail on probably an entire new topic that we'd have to talk about. But yeah, 100%. Now, once you got into the para regiment, how long were you in there before you moved on to that the one that was closer to force reconnaissance? What was it called again?
Pathfinder.
Pathfinder.
Yeah.
So what was the path to get to that point?
I was in the parachute battalion for 3 years, which isn't really long. But again, in the modern army, I think most people just do 3 years and then go back to civilian life. But for me, I didn't enjoy my time very much in the parachute battalion. For me, it was trying to find my feet. This is a thing of wanting to join a unit that I was fanatical about, that I knew everything about the history. And when you get there, it's not everyone else was like me. It was they just joined it. Yeah. And they were, and they wanted to get out. So for me, it was all about I'm dying for combat. I want to do more. And ended up putting my name down to join Pathfinder platoon, which is it's like a reconnaissance brigade reconnaissance force for the airborne brigade. Okay,
and how long were you in Pathfinder?
I was there for nearly 9 years.
Oh, so yeah, you found your feet there, I would imagine.
Yeah, again, it's a love-hate relationship because what happened was I got there, I was injured pretty badly not long after joining, and then other things, life happened basically, and I won't go into it, but I was stuck between a rock and a hard place that I didn't like it in Pathfinders, but it was better than being back in the battalion. Yeah. And I was about to get out after the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Saw combat there, and then I was thinking, right, well, I'm going to get out and go on this, on the circuit, make money on this security, go into Iraq, Afghanistan. Sure. And then last minute, I was doing a parachute. I think I had about a few months left before I had to throw my leave. And there's a friend of mine who was in the SAS, and I was doing some skydiving with him, and he just said, "Why don't you just do it?" And I'd already been on and failed. Yeah. And he said, "Just do it." And again, then it was easier just to. Now there's a lot of courses and things, which is good because it prepares people well. Sure. But I was like, okay, it's like SAS or bust. So I just went back to work and said, I'm going to sign back on as long as I can do SAS selection. And they went, yes, but here's the thing, if you fail, you you've got to go back to battalion. So the pressure was on. So it was like,
yeah, it's you fail and you're back to that,
Yeah,
that
it's
place
like-
you didn't want to get back to.
Yeah.
That's good though. It's a motivator.
Yeah, and it turned out well.
How was selection?
Yeah, I don't really want to talk about
Sure.
this kind of thing, but it's hard because it's supposed to be.
Sure.
But I always say to people, it's any British people who are watching this who are in the military is it's there for the taking.
Yeah.
And it's better to be, and again it's all cliched, but it's better to try it, fail it, rather than stand at the bar saying you could have done it, should have done it, would have done it, and then whatever. But yeah, it was hard and
I get you.
rewarding, and I wouldn't change anything if I did it again.
Now, once you were in the SAS and you were working there, how was that as far as your training and everything? Did you really feel that drive? Because I know we've talked about, you say you're preparing for that moment, you don't know where it was. Did you really feel that kind of fire under you to train and to be ready for anything that could happen at any moment? Did you really have that fire under you at that time, or was it just like constant ops where you were just kind of getting through it?
Yeah, well, again, I'm trying to be quite guarded what I say about my time.
Oh, sure.
So we're not going to talk about whatever training we did, but all I'll say was, again, all the training that I did within the unit was always good and was always focused on the mission at hand. But one thing that I'm kind of proud of is that I never stopped. So even when I was running a desk in 2016 to 18, I was still going on the range. I was still doing stuff. And young guys would say, "Chris, what are you doing this for?" It's like, the war's over for you now. And I'm like, it's never over.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into a Rambo quote. Like,
It's never over. Hey, that Rambo never. It's always up there. It's in here, right?
But yeah, I was saying no, and then life has a strange thing of like coming back and again, name dropping. But I had a good chat with your dad.
Oh yeah, yeah. My dad, Travis, of course. You can't forget him.
And it's like what we were saying, how life is strange and maneuvers people into these situations. And like I say, say the training started in 1975. That's when it started for me. And like I say, most of the life was shaping me. And as I've said this before, is when I joined the army in 1992, 16 years old, I was already a piece of metal that was shaped like a sword. All the army did was made it into the weapon that it became.
I'm sure what a lot of people have a question about is if there was a active shooter situation, if there is an event, the world's crazier. The world's getting crazier year by year. If they found themselves in an event where there was a terrorist attack, when there was an active shooter in their building, what are some advice? What are some things that you could tell them? Not just our civilians, but for guys who could potentially find themselves in harm's way. What are some things that you could tell them from your many, many years of experience?
I think I think the point is to be ready. And now I'm saying be ready. There's a lot to this. So very recently, I offered up my services to train some school teachers in Utah. Anyone who was worked for the Education Authority, I was happy to do some pistol shooting with them. I didn't do that much because I had to leave, but I learned a lot about that sort of training, and there's stuff that I'll probably carry on in the future. But I explained to these school teachers of in the olden days, in the 1990s, it was like we called the tip of the spear, and that, they were you're going to do your thing and you're going to be in harm's way, doing the business, if you like. Now I'd say it's not much of a tip of the spear. Now it's like I'd call it the tip of the ninja star, because you've got front operations which are by active military involved with, but now you have a school shooting. Now you have a mall shooting. Now you have, crime-related gun, knife violence.
Yeah.
So there are no lines, and the threat is everywhere. And it goes back to, if you decide to carry a gun, that doesn't. If you're in the military and you have to carry a gun, if you bought a gun and you keep it in your house, if you're a teacher and you take it to school, or even if you've got your gun and you take it out and you carry it, concealed carry, do whatever. But if you decided to buy a gun, you, in essence, have put yourself at the tip of the spear or the tip of the ninja star tip, whatever. Because that's it. I think that's an acknowledgement that you are ready. You're declaring yourself that you are ready to fight the fight. Now the question is, are you really ready? That's the thing. Lots of people carry guns.
Yeah.
Lots of people say they're going to do this. Lots of people say they're going to do that. But when it comes down to it, they're not. Are they going to do stuff? And the main thing I think will stop people can call it cowardice, people can call it whatever, indecision, but it's not being ready, and I mean mentally ready. So if you're going out, if you walk out your house this morning and you've got a gun and you're constantly carrying, you think to yourself, well, every time I holster a weapon, I think there's a chance I'm going to have to pull out this pistol, use this rifle to kill someone. Because otherwise, why would I carry it? If you don't think you're going to kill someone when you're carrying a gun, then you shouldn't be carrying it. That's unless, obviously, that's outside of the sporting zones. That's for everyday carry. If you don't think if you think you're not going to kill anyone, then you shouldn't carry a gun, because you probably won't. Even when your life's in danger, you probably won't. That's what I would say. I can't. People might call me out on that, but that's my theory. So it's be mentally ready. Be ready to use lethal force if you have to. And that will give you, I think, the first advantage or first step towards success. So be ready to use the weaponry. And then it's like, so you're ready, but then so you're mentally ready. But then again if you don't train, again, that's dangerous, because you carry a gun to be an asset. Now you're only an asset if you train with it or you're confident with it, because if you're in a classroom full of 15 children and you don't know how to use it, if you shoot one of those children by mistake or shoot a first responder or something, that's going to be pretty bad. Yeah. So, and your reliability. So it's that difference in being ready. You train yourself accordingly, so you are not a liability. You are an asset to your family, to those around you, to those who are you there to support and protect.
That makes sense. Now, beyond that, there's a lot more than just, I would say, maybe doing violence. There's also like post stuff, right? Because if an attack was a bomb going off or something, right? There's not so much people to kill at that point, but there are people to save, right? So there's a lot to it.
And I think a lot of it is where do you live? What is your role? If you are in an official capacity, so if you're a police officer, things are going to be different. If you are just a civilian or off duty in an environment where there's been an incident, again, you have to have this mental agility to be able to. Otherwise, if you're not up to it, you have to be honest with yourself and just say, yeah, I'm going to be a bystander. I'm going to save myself and get out of the situation. That ultimately is your default. But if you think you're up to it and you can add value, you have to have the mental agility to be able to flow with the situation, because it may change. For example, there's an explosion. It could have been a bomb. It could have been just a gas leak. It could have been something that wasn't a bomb. So you can't be running around with a pistol out, shouting at people. If it was a bomb, that could have been it.
Yeah.
There could be active gunmen. But who is the active gunman? Because you then, if you gunfire, you then turn the corner. You said, right, it's on. I'm in. You've got your weapon system. But it's not just about when you're on the range and you're shooting your target, or you're doing your cool simulations where you're in a killing house and you're running around shooting targets, and the bad guys look like X, and the friendlies look like Y, and you move through and you shoot the targets, and then you finish it in about 20 seconds. You high five each other, and then you go and do it again. You go around a corner. There's noise. There's potentially smoke. There's things you can probably never imagine, but you have to make this snap decision now of what do you engage, because you're going to have to tell the difference between who is the enemy that you have not seen yet, so you don't know what the enemy look like, who is someone like you who is an armed civilian who wants to do a good thing, who is there as on an official capacity, whether it be law enforcement or military. And you've got to make that decision when you see someone with a gun very, very quickly. But the catch is, if there are bad guys, they don't have any decision to make because they've got a free range. So you've got to weigh all this up, because I would say I'd rather be gunned down and killed by the enemy than shoot someone I wasn't supposed to shoot. And I think a lot of people probably feel that way.
Absolutely.
So it's again, and it all goes back to, are you ready? Because it's a high stakes game. If you are going to respond, if something was kicking off here in Las Vegas, it's like if you and remember the big threat. You could say bigger than the threat than the aggressors, whether they be the criminals, terrorists, or whoever, is the other responders. Because even if you're on point, on scene, turn the corner, bad guy, balaclava on, robbing the bank, whatever, you gun them down. Round the other corner is another version of you who's equally talented, equally keen to get into the fight, runs around the corner and sees you stood over a dead body with a pistol in your hand. You're probably going down. He's going to light you up. So it's things like that to think about. It's not just the highest threat is probably from other people, whether it be a civilian who think he can do the right thing, or a first responder from the law enforcement unit sees you with a gun, you're going down.
It's kind of hard, I guess, to, unless you've been in the situation, to truly understand how chaotic it can be, to truly prepare yourself. What are some ways that people who have not seen these types of situations, how can they get themselves, at least on some level, mentally prepared? How do they get that mental fortitude to be prepared for these situations when they're not able to face them?
I think for me, going back to like what I was wanting to do with some of the school teachers was become natural with a weapon system. Whatever weapon system you carry or deal with, is get natural with it, get comfortable with it. And I don't just mean like shooting fast and doing mag changes and doing all these things. Sure. It's about moving naturally. When you've got a hot weapon, it's good to go. It's being able to move around a room without pointing it at someone, whether it be little people, friendlies, whatever. It's like being comfortable when you've got it in your hand. It's not like, holy moly, I've got a gun in my hand. I've got godlike power now. I can. And someone's like, fuck off that image.
Then we're back to the Rambo.
Yeah, we're going back to it's like, we've got the GLD. GLP, sorry.
Yeah,
that's the history in this. But no, it's being comfortable with a weapon system and being confident with it. Because it's like, I've used this, I've commented on this before, it's like apparently the F-35 strike fighter is incredibly easy to fly.
I'm not sure if it is or not. I'm sure my Air Force guys will get on me now.
The reason I've heard this is that it's incredibly easy aircraft to fly, because it's not about flying the aircraft. Flying the aircraft should be easy because the pilot has got to do combat assessments, doing all these calcs, doing everything else, adding to the combat game. So he shouldn't be using 70% of his mental capacity flying the aircraft. Same as if there's a situation going on. You shouldn't be using 70%, or you should be using as little of your mental capacity holding that gun and operating that gun as little as possible, because you need to be thinking about everything else.
Yeah.
You need to be saving, like for the school teachers, you need to be monitoring the situations, keeping control of all the people that you're protecting, keeping an eye on the door, because the first person through that door might not be the aggressor. There could be law enforcement, could be another child, could be another teacher. So you've got to be thinking about all these things, like thinking, is it time to run? Is it time to hide? Is it time to act? Is it time to not act? But that's going to be extremely difficult if you're using 70% of your mental capacity thinking, oh, I've got a gun in my hand.
So that's a good point. That's a really excellent point. I guess kind of coming to the end of kind of this talk, is there any other kind of factors that are beyond, training with the pistol and have that mental fortitude that you'd like to kind of, what kind of knowledge would you like them to know that's kind of that little extra bit? I don't know.
I don't know. I think it all goes back to, I keep on going about being prepared and being ready. For me, it's the mental conditioning. Physical mental conditioners are extremely important. And on the mental condition, it's not about being, hey, I've done all my training, I'm super keyed up, I'm good to go. It's that attitude of where people who are good at things, who are naturally good at things and are really successful, and from the day they've been born all the way up to a point in their life, they've been super successful and everything, they're great and everyone's a friend. Then one day something out of their control happens. And it's a common thing if that's that people, they completely crumble because everything's been easy for them.
Sure.
And they've been successful. You can't take it away, but then they crumble. People who've dragged themselves up from birth tend to be better, I think, at coping when things go bad. They like laugh it off. And it's just like, I'm it. And that's what I mean by another part of the mental condition is when people are carrying a gun going, well, I'm taking my gun to school, but I'll never use it. And the comment we may all be familiar with, if I'm using my gun, something's gone really bad. And you might have heard that from people in the military who work in ops rooms and things. But then one day something really bad happens and you are it. And you've got to use a gun. And that's where you've got to think. And I mean, you can't prepare for it. Maybe you can prepare for it by thinking. That's what I'm saying. If you're carrying a gun, think, I might have to use that. Because it's like, it's all kicking off. You're in Vegas, you're in a school, you're in wherever. And gunfire's going off, people screaming, people dying. And you think, if your first thought was, well, the law enforcement might be here momentarily. Or Peter, a few meters away, he's always on the range. He's tactical as hell. He'll be there.
He got it, yeah.
And then you see Peter cowering, crying on the floor. Or you see, and you don't hear the sirens. And you realize no one's coming. No one's going. And it's like, and then people are looking at you and you think, it's me. I've got to do it. Yeah. And that's what an important factor to think. And that's what it goes, we circle back to on the, of being mentally prepared of when you holster that gun, when you put it in wherever you carry it at night to defend your property at home, if you're an American, wherever, it's thinking, I might have to use that gun.
Yeah. And that's something we've talked about a lot on a much smaller scale, but in survival and SEER within the U.S. military and the UK military as well, was the idea of no one's coming, it's up to you, right? That idea that you need to be mentally prepared for that moment, to understand that your call to action may come at any point, and you have to have that in your head that at any point it could be you. And that's something that's kind of hard to accept a lot of times because for the most part, for me, you, for everyone around us, life's really good. Life's very easy, very chill. There's always a meal. Things are usually very easy for everyone. So to think that these terrible things can happen is almost unfathomable for many people. But as you know, life can get wild and things can get pretty squirrely pretty quick. So there's nothing that I adhere to more than the no one is coming, it's up to us, or up to me, whoever it is with you.
And one thing, I'm not writing people off, and people who train and it's great, but the will to survive is extremely strong.
Yeah.
And in crisis situations, you'll see people who you'd never would have thought would be any use or good, and they're like all of a sudden, bang, they're on point. And it's again, as if like again, the whole thing we're talking about is people. In essence, we're talking about most people who are watching this probably carry firearms.
Sure.
And it's this thing about just being keyed up to use it. Like I said, if no one's coming, it's up to you. And you don't have to be Wyatt Earp or whatever you're
with
like,
the Rolex.
Yeah. And then you can. That again, it's half the battle if you are prepared for it. But then it's like, but then we see it. There's lots of probably stories where kids see their parents gunned down, and the kids like step up and like escape instead of just, they don't freeze. It's that will to survive.
Yeah.
And when that's engaged, there's like anything is possible, and we can achieve pretty much anything.
And like you brought up with the will to survive, there are things that can't exactly be taught. It's kind of like it's an innate human instinct. It's just that absolute will that no matter the situation, I am going to stay alive, because your drive to live, whether that be for your family, your kids, your friends, just a cold beer at the end of the day, whatever it is, there's always something that drives somebody. But using that to get yourself to past that really hard situation, that's something that speaks to me right there.
Yeah, and I think there's that, and what's like I can't remember what I was going to say now.
You're good. I know. I was riveting.
It was no, it was about it's probably the same old stuff I keep on going on about, but yeah, the other thing as well is when we say our natural ability to survive, there's also our natural like a spider sense. Do you know when you and when we think about what I was saying earlier about there's a situation going on and there might be gunshots, there might be like whether it be a bank robbery or something. But it's strange how you have an ability to read what's going on. People know, and your gut feeling. And again, that's part of I believe as well, is those who are comfortable or mentally conditioned, they can harness or tap into that spider sense of he's a threat, he's not a threat. That's an area that I don't want to go to. That's a good escape route. And it's strange how you pick up on these things. Whereas if you're just like, running in, and it's like, I don't know what to cause, and that's what we say. But it's again, it's tapping into these natural abilities.
Well, you talked about it too. You talked about being so proficient with that gun. It's like flying the aircraft. Like you shouldn't have to worry about flying the aircraft, just like you shouldn't have to worry about the gun. And you've talked about it too, is fitness as well, right? You know how exhausting it can be going through a building and clearing through it. It's incredibly exhausting to hold a weapon up, to walk, to run, to sprint from cover to cover. So being physically fit and mentally fit, well, physically fit specifically, so that as you're in these situations, you're not focusing on, oh my God, I can't breathe. I'm so out of shape right now. My legs are burning. That you're at that high level of fitness so that your weapon's moving with you, your body is responding how it should be.
Yeah.
These are things that should be high on people's priorities lists.
It's the thing of, so if you imagine like situation happens, like we'll talk about training. So we're on the flat range, we're doing skills things, and we're blazing, we're hitting the targets, we're doing well, we're doing all our manipulations well, and that's great. We've then got like an urban training environment, so we can then go in. We'll do some training. Like this is us, as in you're watching. I'm not talking about any particular unit or anything. I'm just talking generally. So we'll go. You might go to like your local range with a killing house. If you call them that,
yeah. No, kill house is fine.
And then you can do your training. Like say you all high five each other. It's all job done.
Sure.
That's it. Reset. Do it again. That's what people do. People all over the world, civilians. That's how we do our training. But here's the thing: is when something happens. Most of the time they're over quickly, but to your point about physical and mental conditioning is we're not taking the shot straight away. We might be, but first we're running to the scene. Then we get to the scene. There might be injured people. We're dragging bodies. We're carrying people. We're administering first aid. We're evacuating people. We're running back and forth to taking people who are injured or who are helpless to safe areas. We're then carrying more people. We're doing more things. We're making decisions. Then we may enter like a prolonged siege situation, which goes on and on and on, and then we're still doing that. We're not doing much shooting. We're not doing any shooting, but we're doing stuff. We're also what are we not doing? Most of the time, we're not eating. Yeah. We're not drinking. We're certainly not sleeping. So it goes on and on and on. Then all of a sudden, it comes to its end. Now you've got to take the shot, but you've just been working out for 2 hours, 3 hours, 10 hours, 17 hours, however many, and now you've got to take the shot, having ran up the escalator stairs or having ran around. That's the difference. Yeah. And you've got to take the right shot. Is that who I'm supposed to shoot, or isn't it? And so there's more to it. And I think and like every situation is always different. And like I say, a lot of them over quickly. But even if it's over quickly, it could be on the back of you've got to take that shot after doing a lot of, or just stood round. You could just been stood round. And those who've been at SHOT Show, it's like being at SHOT Show all day, and then at the end of it, you got to do a course of fire. Maybe that's a thing.
Well, having a stomach bug like me, right? Well, just absolutely miserable.
And then you're just like, with your feet are like boxing gloves, and then you got to do like run around. You're like, oh, that was harder than what I thought.
Yeah. But, well, I mean, there's such a wealth of information that you have, Chris, and I for one can't wait for the day when you're doing training courses like every day, and we're learning from you every day, because that will just be absolutely incredible to get this type of knowledge and information to you. And I cannot, for one, thank you enough for coming on and giving some of this knowledge to my audience, to allow them to be able to gain some of this really valuable insight to a variety of situations, to a variety of events, and it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah,
I've been absolutely. It's not often, Micah, that I don't talk.
Yeah, you were real quiet.
I was real quiet because I was riveted. It was some really incredible information, and I'm honored to have had you on.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, man. Now we're gonna do something a little campy. I usually ask my guest who's here to give a little bit of dad advice for my people. I can't think of a better guy to give some dad advice.
Dad advice.
Yeah. So imagine you have a bunch of wayward children. If you as their father could tell them anything, a little bit of advice, you gotta hit them with something. It's something as simple as be kind to others. Yeah. Have a little bit of humor about you. There's a lot of different things you could say, but we always allow our guests to give a little bit of advice, just life advice in general.
I think always just remember who you are, remember what you can do, stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, and always just strive to do the right thing. And when I say the right thing is, most people have got this feeling in their tummy. If it feels bad, it normally is bad. But if it feels like the right thing to do, most of the time it's the right thing to do.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you. Thank you, guys.